Hello everyone, AmyR here with Prairie Paper and Ink, and I am back using the Beautiful Flowers 2 stamp set from Simon Says Stamps Stamptember release. I have a feeling this set's going to be another one that I do multiple videos with because I absolutely love it. I used it last week. I used the individual floral images from the set last week. I have been wanting to ink up this great big huge stamp. So I have it in the regular size stamp platform here, and this piece of paper, this is Ranger's watercolor paper, and I had cut it down to, it's about 6 inches by 4 3/4. So to give you an idea of how big this stamp is, it's about almost like 7 inches tall by 3-ish inches roughly. So quite a big stamp, which I love. So I have it in my platform here, and I've inked it up with VersaFine ONYX black ink. And with large stamps, or if you have trouble pressing on stamp positioners, what helps is pulling your sleeve or using a cloth like over the heel of your hand and just rubbing it. I always have to remember sometimes to do that, but now that it's fall and it's chillier and I'm wearing cardigans all the time, I have sleeves to do that with. So got that inked with the VersaFine, and I'd purposely originally, like, instead of using the pre-cut 4 1/4 by 5.5 pieces, I cut down a larger piece because my original plan was to tape this down. I was going to use a bunch of water and do some fun watercoloring. And then I was literally changing my mind like as I was making this. So I didn't bother taping it. I just have it sitting on my glass mat, and then I pulled out some distress inks, regular distress inks this time. And I'm going to do a little bit of mixing with them because I am the hostess this week for this week's color throwdown challenge. And the colors are like pink, kind of a peach color, a berry, a really deep berry red, berry pink, and then green. And when I was going through my distress colors, I didn't really have, there's not really a really peachy color. Abandoned coral kind of is if you lighten it. And then a real berry red, like berry pink. So to get that though, it's just a simple matter of mixing. So I have mowed lawn for my green, and I'm doing my, I'm still absolutely obsessed with doing very messy, loose watercoloring. So I'm using my little Tim Holtz detail water brush like I always do. And I just start with more water. I just literally squeeze more water out of the brush and kind of water down the distress ink first. Do my first layer, going outside the lines, making a little bit of a mess. And then I start using more ink and less water to add like more depth to the images. So I ended up adding a couple layers to the leaves. And then to get this like berry red color, I mixed festive berries and seedless preserves together to get that shade. And it just, these two together make this gorgeous berry red color. Love, love. So I do the same thing. Really water it down at first to do kind of that first layer, let it go outside the lines. And then I start adding more color, less water to add, just some depth and dimension to this. And people ask this, and I get it, because I used to watch other people's videos and I was like, how do you know where to put the darker areas? How do you know, what you're doing? Honestly, I just fly by the seat of my pants, but I get I'm more and more comfortable with it over the years. The more I do it, you learn by doing when it comes to stuff like this. Like, you watch videos, you get inspiration, and then you sit down and play. And my first attempts with watercolor were horrible, in my opinion. I struggled, things weren't working. What I was picturing in my head wasn't happening. Like, I struggled. But the more I did it, the more comfortable I got with it, I started getting, just more in tune with how things were going to work and what they were going to do. And then more and more lately, I've been experimenting with going right outside the lines, making a hot mess and having fun with it. So it's basically what I'm doing here is just adding color. And then this is something I don't necessarily recommend doing this, not with this ink. I love watching Kelly Latavola's videos. I love how she, he does watercolor and then adds Copics, etc. I had it in my head. I wanted to add a little bit of Copic coloring just to intensify a bit more. However, I had stamped it in VersaFine ONYX black. So I do not recommend using Copics with VersaFine ONYX black ink. They are not meant to go together. The VersaFine does smear, but with what I'm doing here, I made it work. couldn't remember why I had pulled out. I had my Simon Says Stamp Intense Black ink sitting on my desk, and I couldn't remember why. My memory lately has been the worst. So this was why. I realized as I started coloring with the Copics, I was like, that's why, because I meant to stamp it with that ink that is watercolor friendly and Copic friendly, whereas VersaFine is not alcohol marker friendly. It'll smear. But because I'm not blending colors, I'm just adding a bit of color, I got away with it here. If I was trying to blend, you know, several Copic marker colors together, it would smear the black stamping so bad. Like, it would ruin this. But I'm just kind of dabbing the color on here and there, just adding a little bit of intensity. Again, being a little messy with it, not being perfect. So and being aware of those lines, like trying not to, you know, rub the marker too harsh across the stamp lines so that I'm not messing up any of that VersaFine and all that coloring I had already done. So it works. I'm slowly kind of branching out into using different types of media, you know, watercoloring, Copics, etc., to really like bring images to life. It's fun. It baby steps for me. I'm just sticking my toe in. So after I did that, I took my white gel pen and just added, you know, just some highlights and some dots to, again, give it some definition. And then I die cut that panel with the largest of the Simon Says Stamp rectangle wafer dies, because the largest one is A2 sized. And then I ran it through at the same time with this little narrow frame die from the Simon Frames wafer die set. So I have the rectangle die cut, and then I have that frame die cut. And I also ran that frame through with some Tonic candy floss glitter paper. So I adhered the outer portion of my watercolor panel first, and then I'm just running my Nouveau glue here very lightly right up to the very edge of this inner portion. And I'm going to kind of shimmy this glitter frame into place because it was die cut. It's the exact same size as the other one. I'm going to remove the little frame from my watercolor piece, and then I'm going to inlay that center piece right in there. So it all lays nice and flat, but it has that nice pop of that glitter frame. I love this die set. Love it. It's definitely becoming one I like to reach for quite often, because it's just a nice way to kind of zhuzh up your cards without adding any extra dimension. So instead of doing since I'm wanting to keep this rather flat, rather than die cutting a sentiment and heat embossing more sentiments like I normally do, I decided to just go with a very simple sentiment and from the same stamp set. So I got that lined up, and I just lined this up in my little travel platform this time, because I wanted to make sure that I stamped this perfectly, since I've already done the coloring and the die cutting and the adhering and all that stuff. Plus, this was a new stamp, so little sentiments more often than not need a few stampings when they're brand new. So I inked that up with the Simon Says Stamp Intense Black ink and stamped that on my card front. So it just says, "Hello, friend." And then I went back to my platform, because I have that big, huge stamp in the regular platform still. And I'm just going to line up the inside of my card now. Roughly line up. I'm not as, you know, particular about this. I just want the large stamp kind of stamped across the bottom of the inside of the card. So once I was happy with where the card was placed, I can ink up that stamp with the SPUN Sugar Distress ink. Just tap that across that great big old stamp that on the inside of my card. This stamp, this one, and same with the original, like the first Beautiful Flowers set, inking them up with color inks. The detail of these stamps, I love it. I could rave about them. And I do. I rave about them a lot. I love them. Anyway, stamp the sentiment. And then as a final, just a little bit of embellishment without, you know, going too crazy, I pulled out some Rosewater Jewel drops from Nouveau. These are the ones that dry like transparent. So they kind of go on a little bit cloudy, but then as they dry, they become more clear. They're so pretty. So I added a few of those, and then I'm going to tap this just against the ink pad to kind of smooth them out a little bit, round them out a little bit more. And then I'm going to set this aside to dry, and that's going to finish off my card. So I will have a link below the video to my blog post. I'll have a supply list with links to everything I used. I will also have a link to the color challenge that you guys can play along if you'd like. So you can check that out in my blog post, which is linked directly below the video. Thank you all so much for watching and subscribing and thumbs upping and commenting on my videos. I really appreciate it. And I will see you all very soon in the next one. Bye.